Hey guys, welcome to Soul Music. This is the fifth full episode. It's the fifth full episode because it's May. That is actually the case, and I'll stop talking about that before I have one of my existential panic attacks about the passage of time. So, if you've been with us from the start, we really appreciate you popping by and spending more of your time with us. You'll understand that we are very much a work in progress. We started this literally overnight at the start of the year, having had no experience in producing podcasts at all, and it's been some years, let's say, since my university degree where I really didn't pay attention to the radio production modules involved in it. So we're trying to improve month on month, bringing you more interesting, engaging content. In this month's episode, I talk to a lovely chap by the name of Robin Allender. If you don't know of Robin, he is a musician, he's a writer, he is a biannual stand-up comedian, he hosts his own podcast, he co-hosts other podcasts. All the links for Robin's various works will be in the episode description box below. Please go and check them out. Subscribe to his Substack because he does produce some wonderful, interesting writing or just musings. And it varies from month to month, but it is really interesting. I was a little bit anxious ahead of this interview, I've got to say, guys. Robin's really smart. And I thought, I'm going to be a little bit out of my depth. But he's warm and engaging and easy to talk to, so I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Big shout out to Robin as well for sorting out the audio because I had an epic tech problem at the start of this episode, at the start of recording it. So, as I said, he's a wonderful human and you should all go subscribe to all his stuff as thanks for bringing you vaguely listenable audio quality for this episode. Until we speak to you next time, hasta mañana. And because you are a child of the modern world as you are utilising the internet, go like, go subscribe, go comment. Bye. Welcome to Soul Music podcast, The Songs That Saved Us. This is our fourth full episode. Obviously, there's little mini-sodes in between. But in today's episode, I am talking with a lovely individual by the name of Robin Allender. Some of you who are listening to this, because there's a Venn diagram, I think, of things that I like and my friends like. And I know some people will be listening to this who will know who you are. However, for those that don't, Robin is a lot of things. Can I just say you are a lot of things?
Yeah, sure, yeah. I wish I got paid for all the different things. But
yeah, because I was wondering how to introduce you. So I'm just going to go on the bio that you wrote, I think, on your own website.
Okay.
You are a musician, a stand-up comedian. Is that biannually?
Yes, yeah, basically. It tends to be a couple of gigs a year. That's fine. Still technically a stand-up comedian,
Yeah, I think you did one a few months ago, didn't you?
Yeah. I should do more. I mean, it takes up your whole evening. No, I do want
the whole evening. Is that it? Do you just prep on the night?
No. I mean, it takes up the whole evening for 5 minutes. So it's like you've got an evening of stress and anxiety for 5 minutes work. You know what I mean? So I have, and the less you do it, the more worried one gets, I find.
Well, you class yourself as a stand-up comedian, so that's what we're introducing you are. You are a multi-instrumentalist. Well done, you. So you've toured with Jan Tiersen.
Yeah.
Who I adore.
Yeah.
Oh, Robin. Wow. I love that man. I love Amelie. Obviously, everyone loves Amelie. There's no point me saying that. Everyone loves Amelie. Everyone knows Jan Tiersen through Amelie. But yeah, so you make and produce your own music. Tidal has you credited as an engineer.
Does it really?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Maybe on your own tracks, maybe?
I guess so, yeah. I mean, engineered just means setting up the mics and recording. It's according to Steve Albini, but yeah. So I guess I am an engineer.
I was thinking that I could call myself an engineer, but
Yeah,
after the
you've
debate
got a
we've just
microphone.
had the last 10 minutes, probably not. I think I'd be stretching that. You know, you've had your music played on BBC Radio, so you are a musician. But I think from my research, you've also have or had a day job that is far removed from the field of creativity and your presence and operations in the world of the arts. Is that correct? I'm not going to out you as to what you do and who you do it for,
Yeah.
but I just wanted to check that that was an actual thing because I've got a question around it.
Yeah, I mean, I've had to do lots of different jobs at the same time as trying to do music and comedy and so on. But yeah, currently my job is broadly to do with sustainability, so which is nice, nice thing to work for, you know.
I saw it and it's worthwhile, and I was like, well done, and gave you a
Thanks.
little round of applause. Okay. The reason why I raise that is that in the second full episode where I interviewed my mate Tom, he completely almost denounces his musical past, his musical past. And he still plays music, but he denounces it. And it led to a conversation in the close of that podcast episode between me and my co-host Becky, who's in America, and that's why she's not on this, because she's currently actually therapizing actual patients.
Oh wow.
As it is obviously the middle of the afternoon in Pennsylvania. Why do artists, musicians, so many of them, so many that I know, that she knows, all say that they're not really, you know, they say, oh, you're a musician. They're like, I'm kind of like pulling this kind of like, and got like going into themselves. So I kind of wondered if a stranger came up to you, had no idea who you were just drawn into a conversation, and they say, so well, Robin, what do you do? How would you introduce yourself? What would you choose?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and it's something I think about and I suppose struggle with in some ways a lot, because I think because of the nature of the society we live in, which tends not to reward artists, particularly musicians, that well financially, even if you are doing it full time, it's very hard to identify as that, because you think, well, I'm not making a living from it. How can I say that that is what I do? And I think it's a great shame that we look at society in that way, that things don't have value unless they're making money, you know. So, and I think it's, again, it, you know, it ties back to the stand-up comedy thing you said earlier about, can I say I'm a stand-up if I'm only doing it 2 days, 2 gigs a year or whatever? But it's a similar sort of question, because it's can I say I'm a musician if I'm not, you know, not doing many gigs or not releasing much music? To what extent can you still identify as that, or should you just be defined by a day job or by what you do, which is totally fine, of course. You know, I enjoy my job and everything, and but yeah, it's an interesting one. But yeah, I guess to answer the question, I suppose I'd say, yeah, well, I never know what to say when someone asks me that, really. I tend to say, like, I'm working on podcasts, basically, because that is something the way you know, that, and partly one of the reasons I wanted to keep doing podcasts is because I can say, you know, this is what I'm doing right now. I'm doing a regular podcast. It comes out once a month, and you know, so I tend to open with that.
I think that's a good one to open with. That leads nicely onto my next point. When I was thinking about your podcast, and I will link it in the show notes because Robin's past podcast, is really interesting. And it's kind of just like a bit of the last one I listened to was a stream of consciousness. It felt like a stream of consciousness anyway, about Back to the Future.
Yeah, man.
So, did you set it up on a monthly basis purely so you could call it the Allender calendar?
No. No, that was just a happy coincidence, I think, because I did want to do it weekly, but it would just be too much time. I wouldn't have the time to do it. And my friends do a really nice podcast, the Lost Map podcast, really good record label, Lost Map, and they do it monthly. And I just was listening to that and thought, oh, that's a good idea, because then there's a lot less pressure and everything. So, and then yes, Allender calendar came along as a.
Yeah, it's very. I did wonder. Do you crack open a bottle of wine before every episode?
No, that was just. That was the most recent one. I had to do all the editing, like, you know, in a few hours before going away on holiday, and I just had the wine there to help me get over the line, you know.
Oh, I mean, we've all been there.
Yeah.
Whatever line we're trying to get over, that sometimes the Sauvignon Blanc does help with that.
Yeah, indeed.
When I Googled you
Uh-huh.
and you had musician,
Yeah.
there's a photo of you that comes up in a baseball cap.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, it has ABBA written on it.
Uh-huh,
But
yeah.
this threw me because I was just like, I don't see Robin Allender as a baseball cap kind of person. So I'm like, were you sporting that just because it's ABBA? Are you expressing your devotion to that particular musical outfit? And they're iconic, obviously.
I wear a cap from now and again. I think that was when I was with Jan, we went to the ABBA Museum in Sweden. In Stockholm, yeah. Sat in the helicopter, etc. And I think the plan was just to get the tackiest merch we could possibly find, and so we got that cap.
Was not more tackier than a baseball cap?
Well, I don't know. I think when I went to one of the Beatles museums in Liverpool, Jack asked people who I do the Beatles podcast with, Jack asked me to get the tackiest merchandise, and I got him a lanyard, which was quite good. So yeah, that kind of thing.
Right, I approve it. That's fine, because I've been to that museum and I didn't buy any merch, but I did stay in the hotel. So and
amazing.
I did sit in the helicopter because I'm obsessed with the cover of Arrival. I always was when I was a kid. It's like, why are they signing this thing and it's all glass and it doesn't look safe to fly? Honestly. So I just assumed it was some exotic Scandinavian thing, obviously. So we're here to talk about music predominantly, and I just want to say I've been delving into and you very much are a musician, and you do have quite a big output on the apps. I've been listening to tapes, and I don't want to say it because some people I don't know whether some musicians get offended by this kind of comparison, but Stars of the Lid.
Oh yeah, I love Stars of the Lid.
Yeah. And I was like, I can hear Stars of the Lid so strong, because obviously most art is derivative of something else. It's very hard to be very unique. Well, you can't. There's only 12 tones in like the Western, whatever. So, but I was thinking, yeah, and it was because the first stuff I've heard of yours was Drunken Antics, which is a bit more folky, and I could hear a love of Elliott Smith in there, amongst others. And then I listened to tapes and I wasn't sure what I was expecting. I was like, this is so ambient and it's so Stars of the Lid, and it's lovely.
Oh, cool.
So
yeah.
you very much are a musician as far as I understand. So just wanted to get that out of the way. We're here to talk about obviously your experiences with piece of music, multiple pieces of music that have helped you and really had a profound impact on you. Obviously, the vibe. You've kind of been on the radar since this was going to be a book, and it still is going to be a book, but then it's morphed into a podcast first. And I asked you if you'd like to write about a piece of music that meant a lot to you. So you're here to talk about that. And I'm not going to say too much about it myself. I'd just like to say, take the stage, Robin.
Right.
Talk about your chosen music.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, I think maybe the first thing I thought of when you asked me about a piece of music that means a lot to me was the Keith Jarrett Cologne concert. And I think I don't really know where to start with it. I mean, I think it's an album where, if an alien came down and wanted to know what music was, you could show them this kind of thing. And I think it's an amazing album, but particularly part one is the piece of music that I listen to a lot and find very comforting and consoling. And I think it's very beautiful because it lends itself so well to meanings in a way. I mean, there's lots of things you could talk about in terms of the physical elements of the concert, in terms of, Keith Jarrett apparently hadn't slept, hadn't eaten before. The piano wasn't great, or was it actually broken, and according to some people. And then he totally pulled out of the bag this like astonishing piece of music. So there is just the beautiful story about overcoming adversity. But I think as well the part one, which is it about 20 5 minutes long, I think.
I think it's about 23 minutes long before it
Yeah.
segues into part 2, from what I've listened to. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just that piece of music actually just lends itself to meaning in a way, which is strange because, music is abstract, but it feels to me that it is a piece of music that is about, man's search for meaning, essentially. How can you find solace in something? How can you find comfort? How can you find meaning? How can you transcend? How can you overcome things? How can you find a way through? I think I listen to it and I think I hear those stories, and yeah, like you said earlier, there's only 12 notes, but he finds a way of communicating something, and that's what I find very powerful. There's a really lovely Ishiguro, the novelist Ishiguro, when he won the Nobel Prize, he said something like, I'm not going to quote it exactly right, but it's something like, the goal of any art form, whether it's a book or a TV show or a piece of music, is to say, this is how I feel. Do you feel it as well? That communication. And I think Keith Jarrett somehow, whether he's channeling this incredible torrent of music from somewhere or just expressing something deeply personal, it's something that is very easy for a listener to pick up and understand.
That kind of the emotional effort that's going into it.
Yeah, definitely. It's yeah, and it's really, I could talk about this all day, so if I'm just gonna like,
I'll just start waving. It's fine. Like, no, that.
But I vividly I was aware of Keith Jarrett when I was at uni, and my friend Tom Wilson, who's a lovely guy, had the LP, and I remember seeing the cover and thinking, "Oh, that looks interesting," because my dad had some Keith Jarrett, and I loved. There's a Japan concert I really liked, which was with a trio. And I listened to that, and I think it was years and years later. It was about I would have been about 28, and I just had some people round to the place I was living in, Bristol, and just thought, oh, you know what? I've never actually listened to that Cologne concert, even though I know Keith Jarrett, um, and know some of his work, and I know kind of this album. And I put it on, and it was literally like, okay, I can't have this as background music because I'm paying attention to it too much. I've noticed it, Yeah, basically. Sorry, you're gonna have to leave. And what it was the fact that he's dwelling on the same ideas repeatedly. So there's just an amazing bit, maybe 3 minutes in, where he just suddenly chances upon these two chords. It's just going from A minor to G, and he just keeps doing it and keeps doing it. And what I found amazing like that is that it's almost, you're with him on the journey of writing a song, because when you write a song, you go over, you think, oh, that's a nice chord progression, I'll keep playing that until something comes out. And so he's like letting you in on that creative process. And I found that, I just found it so so sort of endlessly fascinating, and so uh just accessible, because sometimes if you think, I'm going to put a solo piano record on, you don't, the first thing is it would be quite unusual to sort of be that immersed by it. You might think, oh, this, I like this, but it might take a few listens to get into. But this is full of hooks. It's full of melodies that are incredibly accessible, and it's ingenious that he is literally, I mean, is it what improvising means, which is writing on the spot, but he's writing essentially pop melodies on the spot. There are hooks in there that are reminiscent of the Beatles. There's stuff that's reminiscent of Carole King. And what's amazing about it as well is he seems to take you through a history of 20th century music, because there's, classical music, experimental classical music, minimalism. There's sort of Bartok or Debussy, and then there's blues, there's gospel, there's jazz, there's rock, there's pop, and there's soul, all within this 25 minutes. So it's just totally extraordinary how he manages to cram that in. And yeah, I don't know. I think as well, it's like I think I was a bit of a late developer in terms of music or getting into music. I mean, I always loved music, but I think in my late 20s I formed some very special friendships and relationships with people which introduced me to music, which I think I just took it to a slightly deeper level. So I played with the band Gravenhurst, and Nick Talbot was a beautiful man, and it was through him I got into Talk, Mark Hollis, and Scott Walker, and that was, just a revolution, for me. It was like it was a completely new kind of music that I didn't know existed. And then playing with Jan as well. Jan introduced me to so much music. Like I always remember the night I was at his and he played me Gavin Bryar's Jesus Blood Never Failed Me Yet. Do you know that piece of music?
No, I'm not familiar with it.
It's yeah, set yourself an hour and whack it on, run yourself a deep bath, and yeah, you will.
Wow.
There will be tears, I will say.
There will be emotions, will they?
Yeah, but it's like I vividly remember that, and also as well things like there was I loved the Joanna Newsom album Ease, and there was a Jim O'Rourke album that came out late noughties, which is just one piece of music. It was about maybe 45 minutes long. It's called The Visitor, and I really, really loved that as well. And the Cologne concert sort of seemed to fit into all those other sort of long form things that I was listening to. I really like music which starts in one place and ends in somewhere completely different, which takes you on a journey, which is a kind of transcendence. It sort of takes you beyond what you thought was possible, And so it just fitted into that kind of whole world of music I was listening to in my sort of late 20s.
I guess also that there's a cohesiveness to that music. As you say, it takes you on a journey and it lands somewhere completely different, but it's not disjointed. Like from my experience listening to and my grandfather had that. I think I mentioned it in an email. He had Keith Jarrett, and I'm pretty sure he had that on vinyl. And I didn't listen to it because I wasn't a big fan of. He would subject me to. I mean, I say subject, it sounds like a torture experiment. It wasn't, you would try to expand my horizons and play me Miles Davis and John Coltrane. And at the time when I was very young, just coming into double digits, I was listening to like Nina Simone and Sarah Vaughan and Dinah Washington, Billie Holiday. I preferred blues and kind of vocal, more melodic. I couldn't really understand the more free kind of certain elements of the Cologne concert remind me of that, where he's absolutely, obviously it's melodic, it's skillful, beyond skillful, but he's hammering at the piano and it almost to me feels a bit claustrophobic.
Right.
The way that is like so powerful, that particular piece of the concert. And I can appreciate it now. As a child, I wouldn't have. I would have walked out of the room. I would not have.
Oh, I totally. Yeah.
Too sensory overloading for me.
I mean, I think
I love the way it flows, even though it goes from hammering to more melodic, bluesy type, slow tempo, and it still fits. It still works.
Totally. And I think you sum it up as really well. There is stuff that's challenging about it, and there were other live concerts. I think it's the Bremen one, which is another really famous concert. It's like it was a triple LP, and there's a bit where he actually gets up and starts hitting the piano, like playing the drums on the piano. So, but I think as well but that's interesting because the virtuosic elements of the Cologne concert I find are maybe the less interesting, because when he's doing those incredible runs, sort of Flight of the Bumblebee style things, there's almost something he's just stretching his out a bit and almost not filling time but sort of showing off a bit before getting back to some of the more melodic or ingenious transitional stuff. But both bits are brilliant, but for me those virtuosic bits are almost not what makes it as interesting as the other bits.
I mean, I think for people who are not aware of this, if they're listening and they want to explore it, I mean, as Robin mentioned, it's improvised. Most of it, he's doing an ostinato, isn't he, with his left hand? So he's playing like what I would call a loop, just over and over again, and then doing the chords or whatever with his right hand. You know, I just listen to it as someone who's not, I mean, I only got to grade 2 and a bit on piano. So I listen to it with the kind of ear of someone who just loves music rather than like trying to listen to it technically, but you can obviously hear the technical prowess. What fascinated me about it was, you touched upon it, the story of, I mean, I suspect there's quite a lot of lore around this concert.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's one version that says that he eschewed maybe going on the train from Switzerland to Cologne and got in a Renault 4 with his manager. And then when he arrived in Cologne, he was in such a bad mood because he had really bad back pain. And it's like, no shit. And it seemed like a catalogue of errors that led up to the broken piano, if that's the case, as to how broken it was. And him saying he's not. I mean, if I'd have been Keith Jarrett at this point, I'd have been like, get me out of here. I'm on a plane.
Well, that nearly happened, yeah. I'm just going to open a beer, non-alcoholic beer.
You open, that's fine. I'll have a little sip of my session wine. So,
cheers.
Cheers. But what kind of like really makes it fascinating to me is like he'd had this journey. They'd been the venue manager, was it, or the person responsible for managing the concert, sent them to the Italian down the road in the hope that it would calm him down. And you know, his pizza didn't arrive in time, so he came back to the venue to this still broken piano, hungry, back pain, and then manages to get up on stage and just like, you know, create this sort of masterpiece. And it's almost like it was divinely guided. Some things happen because they're meant to happen. Had he not been in that frame of mind, would he? I mean, I know he's a wonderful pianist, a wonderful jazz musician. Had he not been in that frame of mind, would he have created that moment in time?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the particular circumstances of that concert made him raise his game, I think, and made him just show, you know, this is a crappy piano, but look what we can do with it. And also as well, just like, I think there's a good 50-year anniversary program about it on the BBC. It's on iPlayer, and Jacob Collier's on it, and he says a really interesting thing, which is a lot of the start. He starts in A minor, and he's, for a lot of it, is just playing the white keys, and so there's something about the idea of, he's almost saying, look what I can do with these very minimal ingredients. I can create something really magical. Not only is it a busted piano, but I'm using a limited aspect of the busted piano, you know. And so there's a lovely Paul McCartney quote where he says something like this. He said it in 1966 when he was feeling particularly expansive and on drugs, but it was something like, you know, he said, I can hear an entire song in a chord, and I can hear an entire song in a note. And there's something of that about the Cologne concert, about, I'm just going to play the chord, just like very simple, A minor to G, and just see what comes out of it, you know. And there is something of that there, that he's, not only is he intentionally putting in the show-stopping performance by hammering the keys, the virtuoso passages, but he's also saying, look what I can do with just these simple ingredients. So, you know. But and the other thing as well, what you reminded me of, you know, he is a prickly character, and you wouldn't want to get on the wrong side of him. And, you know, it's very sadly, he is no longer able to perform because he had a stroke a few years ago. But his concerts before that were renowned for his behavior, and some promoters said, you know, he was very, very difficult to deal with in terms of insisting on bizarre stage settings, not having any lights at all in the venue, you know, walking off if he heard someone making a noise, coughing, etc. There was even a story, which I'm sure is urban myth, about him putting cough sweets on the chairs for the audience. But that isn't that interesting though, because it shows to me someone who, yes, is maybe a difficult character, but is also highly attuned to his environment. So what makes him difficult is also what makes him a genius. And I think it reminds me of Van Morrison in that sense, because Van Morrison is also famously a bit of a tricky customer.
That has been said.
It has been said, yeah. But he manages to make incredibly beautiful, soulful music. And is there something of the... I think one can't exist without the other somehow with him. I think that's my reading of him sometimes, is that he is someone... I mean, that awful... What's that really terrible cliche people have on fridge magnets about sing like no one's listening sort of thing, dance like no one's watching.
Dance like no one's watching.
Yeah, but Van Morrison sort of does sing like no one is listening.
I'm not... His attitude seems to be, for me, I don't... And then maybe there's a touch of this about Jarrett at that concert. Is like, I don't care whether you're here or whether the audience is here. I'm doing this for me.
Yeah. And that's the same with... Yeah, exactly. I agree. And that's exactly the Van Morrison thing, is that what that creates, despite being quite hostile behavior on a personal level, what that creates is an amazing experience where you're witnessing someone creating or witnessing someone performing something, and without a filter, And one thing you could definitely say about Van Morrison is there isn't much of a filter.
The Clone concert, and you were talking about obviously the time that it came into your kind of view as such. In terms of meaning and how it impacts you, does it remind you of a more golden time and you had these friendships? And, I think we can all say maybe in our late 20s, early 30s, it was like, I mean, I look back on the 90s like it was the best time in the world ever. And it really surprised me in your podcast episode, actually, about Back to the Future. You seemed quite surprised when your guest said she really loves the 90s. I think you sort of did something like, really? And I was like, sat there going, but it's the best. The 90s are the best.
Yeah.
Oasis, the Fugees. It was such a time, but I think it's just because I was in my sort of mid to late 20s, and I was uni. I went to uni as a mature student, so it was kind of like a golden era for me. Is that what? So if I hear, say, the Fugees, the score, I'm instantly transported back to those times when I was probably a bit more carefree, less responsibilities. Is that what the Clone album does for you?
I think there is an element of that where, it's maybe nostalgic for that time. And certainly hearing it for the first time, or any music like that, was very revelatory. You're very much hearing it reminds you of hearing it for the first time. So there's definitely that. And I think as well, it's sort of, it does remind me of my dad a lot, because I don't think he had a copy of it either, which is strange because it's a big omission. It's the biggest selling jazz record of all time, forever, for Dad not to have a copy of it. But for some reason he didn't, and so I gave him a copy of it around that time. And he absolutely loved it. I remember him messaging me saying he was listening to it over and over again and stuff. And so it reminds me of Dad as well. There is that element to it. And there is, I mean, I don't know how I feel about. Maybe I shouldn't talk about this, a bit too personal. Maybe, I don't know. Is that what you're after, though?
No. It's what you are comfortable with. I'm a good ear, and this is a safe space, but it's entirely what you are comfortable with, Robin. It's up to you.
Okay. Well, basically, just when he was very, very ill, we listened to it together as well. So there was that sort of nice moment sharing that experience with him before he died as well. So,
which kind of takes you out of the situation of the person that you love and are very close to is obviously going through this experience which you are watching them go through. I had a similar thing with my grandfather when he was 90. I mean, he was 93. He had a great life. So let's just put that out there, you know. But he'd been diagnosed with cancer, and then it was very quick. He had 6 weeks to live. So I rushed off to Cornwall, and we sat and we listened to Madame Butterfly together. Well, my grandfather loved opera, dragged me to loads of operas, and I couldn't stand the stuff. But I like the one that I do love is Madame Butterfly. In particular, I like the hum and chorus, the act. I think it's beautiful. So we sat and we listened while he was still able to, and was still kind of vaguely present in the situation, listening to Madame Butterfly together. And I'm not saying it made it less painful, but it did create a really lovely memory for me. I mean, I put the sheet music in his coffin after he actually passed.
Oh, wow.
And, I think I have a very romanticized notion of how you should celebrate someone's passing.
Oh.
So there's me doing the kind of dramatic thing of putting sheet music for Madame Butterfly, because it was kind of like the thing that just me and Grandad shared. And obviously I was very close to him. But it made it easier, and it's a very special thing for me. And now I used to be, there was a few years before I could listen to Madame Butterfly again. Now I can. It's well over a decade since he passed, so I can kind of understand how you associate it. Obviously, with that's like quite deep, I imagine quite intense moment with your dad. It's nearing the end of his life.
Yeah, and I think as well. Yeah, I found it hard to listen to for a bit after he died. I remember as well being in a taxi in an Uber, and sometimes the Uber driver or an Uber driver or a cab driver says, do you want to play any music? You play some music, and I think I suggested the Cologne concert, and I started crying, and after he dropped me off, he said, "Oh, you really like music, don't you?" Which is really funny.
But did he rate you?
Oh yeah, God knows. I don't know. It reminds me of the time. I think I was in a cab and said they said, "What do you want to put on?" I said, "Oh, can you put Radio 3 on?" And it was Late Junction, and it was the very experimental music show, and I think it was Birdsong, and it was just Birdsong going on, and I just remember getting out and him just immediately turning the radio off. I just inflicted 10 minutes of Birdsong on this.
Never coming in my taxi again.
Yeah. So the rating definitely took a hit there for sure.
No, I mean, I think it's good that you have that. Do you ever get, and tell me to shut up if this is too personal, do you ever get disheartened about creating, about making your own music? Do you struggle sometimes with it?
I've never been asked a question like that, so it's really nice. So I'm just going to enjoy it. But I don't.
You enjoy it. It's fine.
Yeah, but I think I just it's very much a hobby. I remember chatting to John Robbins about this, basically about what you said about how do you define yourself, and I said, can I really say I'm a musician if I'm just playing around on the guitar a couple of times a week? And he said that's a pretty damning indictment of hobbies, which is really true. And so, but it is. I mean, hobbies are very important
because they are very important.
I find it very meditative. I find I lose sense of time. I find I'm not just doom scrolling and checking my phone constantly. And so I love playing the guitar, and I love coming up with ideas, but if I try to sit down and say, right, I'm going to write a song, I never do. That's the way I do it. I just can't do that. It has to come out.
It has to be organic.
Yeah, definitely. It has to come out of some state of flow, really, which is what the Cologne concert is really the best example of. I'm not comparing myself to Keith Jarrett.
Even if you wanted to, this is still a safe space, so that's fine. I was just about to say, like the Keith Jarrett, the Cologne concert is just probably one of the strongest examples of someone in a state of flow and just really in their own world and like tunnel visioned. I wondered if you were ever like feeling a little bit disillusioned about maybe you sat and you were picking away at your guitar and it just wasn't quite, like you say, flowing for you. Would you listen to Keith Jarrett? would you listen to that to sort of bring you into a state of, well, look at what Keith did?
I don't know.
And lift you up and like bring
I
you
think
out of your own funk, I guess.
I've never actually done that, but I think sometimes I have just listened to another song or tried to work out another song, and for before this, I sort of played along to the Cologne concert on the guitar, or tried to, which is something I've never done before, and that's brilliant because you spot all kinds of things in it, which is, you said earlier about you can appreciate it without having any sort of theoretical knowledge of music, but I think if you do go into the theory, there are all kinds of other brilliant meanings to it as well. If, for instance, I noticed that the part 1 starts in A minor and it ends in A major, so there's that's another meaning you can add to it, that you take a sad song and make it better, to quote Hey Jude, which is what happens in Hey Jude. He starts sad and then he makes it, which is, there's like that kind of meaning. Or there's a bit which I really love, which I thought I'm going to try. I mean, I've got my guitar here. Shall I show you the bit?
Let's do it. Do it. I've got Vino Verdi, so I'm fine. Yeah.
I feel like David Brent, when he gets the guitar. But can you hear it? Okay.
That's iconic. So you're recreating a cultural touchstone there.
Can you hear this? There's a bit maybe halfway through where he's playing around C minor somewhere, and he's just sort of worrying away at this melody, which is it's do 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 do. Like that, and he's just playing it in all these different contexts and trying to. It's like it's the most powerfully metaphorical moment of the piece, if you like. I realise I sound like a ponce, but but it's like he's trying to find a way through, and then he suddenly comes to it where he plays the same thing, but in the key of E flat minor, so 3 semitones higher, and it's. And that it feels like this breakthrough, like he's got through, and it's a really climactic moment, and it's really, really beautiful, and they're sort of working out the fact that, so that's what's happening there. He's done this big modulation, it's a very dramatic modulation, and that's why that moment feels like, that's why I connected with it emotionally, And then I worked out that that's the same key change that's in Living on a Prayer by Bon Jovi.
Oh yeah, I've done a lot of listening to the Cologne concert in the last few days, so I really like it, but it's a lot. When it starts out with the hammering, I'm like, and I've watched a lot of YouTube videos of people talking about it and talking about his technique, and I can assure you, Robin, that there are people out there on YouTube who sound a lot more poncy than you do, so it's fine.
Okay.
Just to wrap up, thank you so much for sharing your stories, and especially about your dad. I really appreciate it. I think it's always nice to talk about things that, they might be a little bit painful, but a lot of people out there have gone through similar and might be able to connect with that and think, there's a solidarity in sharing stories, I think, especially about challenging times, and especially about how music helps us or what it means to us. I just want to sort of wrap up by asking you a question. And I don't want you to think about this too much. I'd quite like a snappy answer, no pressure. Okay. If you're in a really good mood, you come home from being sustainable and everything's gone great, what song do you put on? I mean, it can even be relevant to now if it's something that you're listening to a lot now but I'm just interested to know whether you will come home and go to a certain song, or if you struggle, you can say artist, but really we'd like a song.
I mean, Give It Up by Casey and the Sunshine Band.
Give it up. Give it up. And would you shimmy around
yeah.
the living room to it?
I mean, that is well, that is the ultimate. I mean, it's a mad song, but it's brilliant. It's a perfect pop song, and it will cheer you up. It's completely ridiculous, but it's great. I love it. It's a good song.
Listen, it doesn't matter whether it's ridiculous. It's if it does the job for you, if it impacts you and connects with you emotionally,
Yeah.
what you need, then that's what matters. In a similar vein, Really Bad Day. You went to the Tate to see an exhibition. You couldn't get in because the queues were like swarming down the South Bank.
Yeah.
It's raining. London is grim. You probably love London. I lived there for long enough. I'm like, when it's raining and feeling a little bit like that, you come in through the door, you're in a mood. Would you actually put on something to match that mood, or would you put on Give It Up to bring yourself?
Well, that's a very good cue. I think I do often put something to cheer me up, but I do like a lot of very sad music. But yeah, currently at the moment, I'm just having a big phase with All Things Must Pass with George Harrison, and I think that's an album I'm going to a lot for those kind of moments. It seems to be I'm always in the mood for it, and particularly if you're feeling a bit down, I find it very, very consoling. And I also, because it's so long, I finally did the obvious thing, which is just made a playlist of my favorite songs on it, and now it's just a really good album length. But I think that album I find very comforting, because I think it's obviously a very spiritual album, but I think a lot of the album, I mean, I'm not a religious person, but a lot of that album has almost the quality of prayer about it. I think in terms of it's about communication, it's about being in, again, I guess, like flow state, or being in a state where you feel receptive to certain spiritual ideas. And like Jarrett, I think George Harrison throughout that album just uses these brilliantly inventive chord changes that take you to somewhere not expected. And I think he uses the chord changes to actually say something about transcendence. You know, again, the pontometer's dinging away, but I think if you listen to like Beware of Darkness, no one writes songs like that. I mean, there's nothing, you know, it's weird when people say that, oh, you can't do that, you can do anything you want with chords, you can go, you know, but it's so unusual, and it's so noticeably unusual the way the chords move, that I think it's like he's saying, you know, there's the everyday and there's a spiritual level you can transcend. Yeah, and so that's an album like I'm coming back to a lot at the moment.
And I think I would add my 2 pence in there. Say you can be an atheist, which I am, but you can also be spiritual. And I think a lot of people don't think that's the case, but I think it's entirely plausible.
Yeah.
To have faith, but not necessarily in one specific God or in one religion or subscribe to religion at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
What do you think about the Beatles movie casting? Quickly before we wrap up.
You
pull the face.
I just feel a bit indifferent to it in some way. I just feel it's such a waste of time and money. That the thing that is crazy about it is, if just as a consumer of music, you said, okay, I want to listen to the first Beatles album the way that they mixed it, i.e. the mono version of Please Please Me. You can't. You can obviously download it illegally or fork out for the mono CDs or buy a mono LP, but it's not on the streaming services. So the way they're handling the legacy is baffling to me. You know, why not just make the records available? You know, like, no one needs 4 Beatles films.
Are they not trying to modernize the Beatles? You know, given the casting with Mescal, I think Joseph Quinn is in it, isn't he, from Stranger Things?
Well, I think anything that will potentially get another generation of people into the Beatles is great. But I think of all the things they're doing, why not just start with the music? There's like hours of outtakes and hilarious studio chatter that they could release that people want to hear. And that is actually the Beatles being the Beatles. Why not just release that?
Would the millennials, is that what you call them?
I think we've gone way past millennials now.
What generation are we in now? I don't even know.
Alpha, is it beta? I don't know. Alpha?
Beta? I don't know. Whatever the generation, would they be interested in the outtakes and repressings and things like that?
No, you're right. Yeah, I don't think maybe you're right. But at the same time, I think it's mad that the stereo version of Please Please Me sounds crap. And so to a young generation, they go, oh, you know what? I'm going to listen to this first Beatles album. And they will listen to it and go, well, this is rubbish.
Rubbish, yeah.
And, a lot of the stereo, the famously hard pan stereo was like, why am I listening to the Ringo on the right and John on the left and so on? And whereas you could just be listening to the mono Sgt. Pepper, and that sounds amazing, or the mono Rubber Soul, which is much better than the stereo one. I mean, maybe I've gone too deep.
I think the beta generation or Delta or whatever we are in now, I think they'd listen to that and they'd be like, what even is mono? They just wouldn't. Or stereo, God, maybe, because don't they talk in like 180 and hertz?
I guess maybe they'll just be playing it on their phones on the bus to annoy me anyway. And no, I don't know.
Whilst vaping, probably.
Yeah, no, I don't know. It's hard to know. I just think it just seems like a big waste of.
Will you go and watch them then?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. And with that, we'll wrap it up. Robin, thanks so much for your time. It's been a joy and really interesting to talk to you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Yeah, I've really enjoyed this. And sorry I've been rabbiting on, but I really like this album. So.
Hey Becky, you okay?
I'm cool. How are you?
Look at me with my professional podcasting setup now.
You look awesome. So professional.
I don't feel awesome. I'm moving the mic around while I'm using it, which I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to do.
I feel like I should be on some kind of like customer service with my headset on.
Telling me how to use my mic. You're not trying to sell anything. What you're trying to do is to convince Izzy just not to move around, not to move the mic.
Stop. You must keep your head straight.
Stop fidgeting. Keep the mic in front of you. Do not bash your head into the mic. That is something that's happening on a regular basis.
Smack your teeth off of it.
Yeah. I keep slapping it with my fingers and like because I go like that. So I'm going to be really good. I'm going to be so professional. Apart from the last like 90 seconds, this is going to be really professional. So, how are you? It feels like ages since we've been on a video call together, actually.
I feel like I've gone through a lifetime.
You've had some big news. You had a big win.
I did have a big win.
You had a big win. Tell me what music you put on to celebrate your big win. You can. You didn't.
I didn't. I didn't listen to anything actually that weekend.
Were you just too exhausted?
I mean, I'll tell you, I did get new vinyl in that it was like that same time frame. I got Green Apple Quick Step, and I don't know if anybody knows who they are, but they're from Seattle during like pre-grunge. So I love them. I love Ty Willman. I love Green Apple Quick Step.
Green Apple Quick Step. I don't know of them. Are they quite obscure?
very obscure, and you
Yeah.
can't find them on Apple Music. I mean, you can find like a song here or there, but not like the entire album. And I'm like, I totally got the album, and I'm like, yes. I got it from a.
Did you have to search it out?
Yeah, totally searched it out.
That's dedication.
That's total dedication. I was so excited, and of all places to get it, I got it in your country. Like, make it make sense.
But isn't right? Not that I want to go down this route, because we always seem to end up name checking politicians in America. But hasn't Donald done something with tariffs? Won't you have to pay like $100 import charge or something on it?
See, I had thought the same thing. I'm like, man, this thing's gonna come in and it's gonna cost me like $1 million. But apparently customs isn't doing anything with that kind of stuff yet, because it did not cost me an arm and a leg. So yeah.
So I think the key message here for Americans is, if you want to buy cool vinyl from overseas, get it done now.
Get it done now before anything is done by the orange stain. So
the orange stain, the bad Oompa Loompa, the Oompa Loompa of evil. That's what I'm going to start calling him, the Oompa Loompa of evil. So good. I can't believe you didn't like put something on and shimmy around your kitchen to celebrate your big win.
No, you know what I did directly after my big win? I sat down at my computer and went on to the next win. It's totally my style.
Are you not then just harnessing the energy of the big win to because you're feeling motivated, you're feeling up and motivated, so you harness that energy and take it onto addressing the next potential big win? I can understand that.
Izzy, I'm just desperate to get out of where I'm in.
Yeah, we won't talk about that. We won't talk about that. No, we're not naming and shaming or doing anything. So
no.
You see, when I have a big win, I just lie down for about 2 days afterwards. I don't take any momentum from it at all. It just exhausts me.
I can see this. Now, I will tell you, there has been like a huge sense of calm. Like, I almost feel stoned all day now. Like, I just feel so relaxed and not worried about anything at this point. Like, something comes up and I'm like, I don't care. Something else comes up, I'm like, I don't care. It's like I'm just calm and serene, and I don't have anything more to worry about.
When you were taking part in the thing that led to your big win, I think can we say it was like a sort of exam scenario type thing?
Yeah.
Pretty intense.
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel that you were in, because this sort of ties into something that I talked about with Robin, whose interview has obviously preceded us recording this for this episode. Do you think that you had like achieved some sort of state of flow? Were you in a state of flow? Because you told me that before it, you were like, I don't care. Like, it had almost like you kind of ascended to some other level where you were feeling quite zen and quite calm, and I wonder if that whether you were in a state of flow, and would you even realize if you were in a state of flow? Because I've been thinking about this a lot lately.
Actually, that kind of makes sense. Actually, like, we could talk about it. I'm okay to be completely candid about it. So, listeners, I had to take an exam for some state licensing kind of stuff. And I failed my first time, which I noticed is a theme of mine. I always seem to fail the first time of anything, whether it's like a driver's license or whatever. I always seem to fail. And I think it's because I get so hung up, or because I just think I get so hung up on my anxieties. And then the second time around, it's kind of like I know exactly what I'm doing, where I'm going, and I don't care. So after I failed, I was like, okay, I remember everything that was up on this test, and it was like nothing what I had been studying for, because it was nothing what I had been studying. And so I brought out all my tricks. I got all my books. I got everything. I got my sense going so I could smell things and remember things. Blah. And I totally crammed for like weeks. And then finally, like, 2 or 3 days before the actual test. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, this is overkill. Just stop. Just stop. Just stop.
Yeah.
If you don't know it by now, you're never gonna know it. Just put it down and you'll just wait until you fail it and you'll start all over again. Just stop. Because I started getting myself in a loop. Like, my mind was like, is this new information? I feel like this is new information when it's not new information. So I'm like, done. So yeah, I would say about 3 days before my test, I started in a flow and I'm like, I'm done. I don't care. I'm done.
And that's maybe the start of the flow process of like, it is what it is. Is that what flow is? It is what it is, just acceptance and digging into the knowledge that you're. I mean, I have so many questions about flow. Like, I don't think I've ever been in a state of flow, but if I have, would I even realize it? Because
well, I haven't heard the podcast yet, so I'm not sure what context he's going with flow. I mean, there's things in Ayurveda where you call things ebb and flow, and you just kind of go with it, right? You just kind of go with the motions, right? And that is kind of what it is. You accept it, you surrender to it, and that is it. You make peace with yourself about it, I guess.
Yeah, and you just totally tap into that moment. And I suppose it's about surrendering to the moment. It kind of does match what I was talking about with Robin. We talked about obviously Keith Jarrett, this particularly famous sort of jazz concert that took part where it was basically all improvised, and I think it's kind of probably one of the strongest examples of someone just being in a state of flow. But there were a lot of calamities that seemed to lead up to him taking the stage, like broken pianos, like travel issues, stuff like that. So that would make sense that he surrendered to that moment and just was like, I'll step up and I'll do what I can do with what I already know.
Yep.
And that led to the flow. I've got so many questions, and I would really love it if at some point in the future we could probably explore a bit more about flow. I've just bashed my teeth into the microphone. So
It happens.
Because I am not in a state of flow with this podcast equipment. I will be, but yeah, I'd love it if at some point in the future we can maybe do a little bit more around flow and maybe about music and how music can help with that. So I have had no big wins, but I don't think I've had any wins. I did chop up a Christmas tree that's been in my backyard for 3 years.
That's a win.
And burnt it over the weekend. That is a very low key win.
No, it's a huge win.
You know, it is. If you know me and you know my reluctance to go outside and chop things up, then yes, it's a huge win. But that's my only kind of significant thing that I can say. Yes, I achieved that, and that was good. So now there's no more skeletal Christmas tree remains in the back garden yard thing. And I didn't go and celebrate with any music because it was such a low-key win. And I haven't really been listening to... I have been listening to music, but the music has just been kind of going over me because I was so immersed in listening to this concert by Keith Jarrett ahead of my interview with Robin in the middle of April. And I was watching YouTube documentaries about it. I got so involved in the lore and all the kind of like... I'm pretty sure some of it is probably embellished about how this concert came to be, so all the myth around it. But I was kind of listening to music, but I wasn't really listening to music, if you know what I mean. And it wasn't really until the end of this month, maybe the first couple of days of May, that I started noticing other music and the effect it was having on me. Yeah, it's weird. It made me feel, listening to the Keith Jarrett concert, not in a bad way, it made me feel really unusual. It's quite an affecting piece of music, I think, and maybe we'll delve into that at some point in the future when we have more time. So it's only really been in the last couple of days, but I guess if anything that I've been enjoying, there's been some electronica, dance, EDM out by an artist called Marie Davidson, who's worked with like Soul Wax and stuff. She has a particularly famous remix with Soul Wax, Too Many DJs. But she's put out some new stuff, and you know, this stuff is 10/10 bop. It is bop central. So yeah, like that was what you're doing now for the listener. Becky is doing a physical expression of bop. And that is what I've been doing on the bus, low-key bopping. I haven't been waving my arms around like you were doing, but yeah, that kind of like that on the bus on the way to work. It's really got me through some, and it's suited because the weather kind of got nicer in England. The mornings are lighter. I'm not going to work in the dark and the rain. So it suited the mood as well in terms of the weather and how I was feeling. But I felt quite flat, and really those songs, those tracks, those EDM tracks have been the only thing that kind of really made me bop, even if it was very, very subtle bopping. So I don't really have anything to report. And then yesterday I started listening to a track by they're kind of indie shoegaze. I think you'd love these. They're English, I think, and I used to listen to them a lot in the noughties, and I didn't listen to them for a long time, and then Robin, they're called Bark Psychosis. Robin, who I interviewed, posted on his story about a band, a piece of music that reminded him of Bark Psychosis. And I was like, I love Bark Psychosis. I've not listened to them for so long. And I revisited their album Codenamed Dustsucker, which I really love. And there's a track at the end of it called Rose. And it's ambient, it's instrumental, it's a bit bleak. It's very immersive. It's very cinematic. I recommend, if you need to maybe do some sort of meditation or have a kind of meditative feeling along to a piece of music, go check out this track called Rose by Bark Psychosis. I'm going to put it on the playlist. It's a bit melancholy. It's a little bit dark. It's got a very discordant beginning with someone twanging a guitar that sounds a bit out of tune, but it's lovely. It's immersive, it's cinematic. So I'm back to my normal kind of pattern of listening to ambient melancholy music. So, with the odd subtle bop in between. I did bop a bit to George Michael yesterday, if that counts.
Which one? Which song?
Fast Love Part 1. Why don't we say? No, I'm not going to sing it. Sony will sue me. So anyway. It's the one where is the video where he's in the toilet dressed as a policeman because he's doing some sort of ironic comment on his all the judgments on his sex life and stuff. So, but that's a bop, and I bopped to that for 5 minutes in my bedroom. So there you go.
Movement. It's all therapeutic.
It's all therapeutic. So we have to keep this short today because we're all really busy. You've got family stuff to go and attend to, as have I. But we just wanted to check in. We just wanted to touch upon flow a little bit, talk about the music that's helped. Do you like that obscure record that you've paid? You know,
hey, I have a French band.
You have a French band.
Yeah. Actually, I have 2 songs that I've been like checking out. Okay, one is I think it's a guy from Spain. I'm not sure. It's called Meteoro. I think it's like, a take on Meteor, right?
Yeah.
And the song is called Kaleidoscopico.
Kaleidoscopico.
Yeah, that's good.
That's an Italian accent, not a Spanish accent. Don't write in with your comments on my pronouncing Spanish in any time.
Well, I'm so like versed in Italian. I was doing it too. So. Okay, and now for the French one.
Go on.
Okay, they're called Macadam Crocodile.
Like the cats?
I don't know.
I'm so amused by that. I don't know why.
The song is called Walk Faster, so you'll have to like check it out. It's not
Does
bad.
it make you walk faster? Is it a bop?
I was driving when I was listening to it, so
did it make you drive faster? Did you run over any Amish? No, don't. Let's not go
I
there.
did not run over any Amish, but I was just driving in town. So yeah, but it's good. So you'll have to check.
Good.
Yeah.
Right. I'm gonna check them out just for the name alone. Macadam Crocodile.
I didn't even realize that they were French, and I didn't want to pick a French band this time. I kind of wanted to like get away from it, so I was doing a little research, and I'm like, shit.
You can't. Med. You can't get away from. And if anyone is playing podcast bingo, they'll be so happy that they did get to cross that French song. Becky picks a French song square off bingo card.
It should be like the middle one. It should be like a freebie.
There's only 3 squares on that bingo card. There's Moomins, French songs, and us insulting some kind of culture or nation. We've ticked one off at least. Well, actually, no. I did mention you potentially running over the Amish, so I guess that's an insult. But I don't mean it. And I like your bands. They're really well accomplished bands. Anyway, with that, before I get myself into a deeper hole, I'm going to wrap up. I'm going to say au revoir, and we will speak to you all soon. Bye.